prior to us connecting, I sort of felt like I was going in circles, and I knew I was making similar mistakes or kind of repeating patterns, but I wasn't sure how to change them. I feel like that, they say that's the definition of crazy, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. And it actually, there was sort of a good metaphor. Years ago, I had a boyfriend and we had gone to Costa Rica, and he was a surfer. So I was going to learn how to surf. I'm an athlete, strong swimmer, great balance, like all the things that would make me a good surfer, comfortable in the ocean. For the first 4 or 5 days, every time I got up on the board, I would wipe out. I would not even get anywhere on the wave. And it was like, I was so frustrated. And there was supposedly a teacher that was supposed to help us, but he was not paying very good attention. And he was just, keep trying, keep trying. And I took a couple of days off. I was so frustrated. I also got stung by a stingray. That's a different, there was a lot about that trip. But fast forward to the last day, and we were out at a different beach, and the teacher actually came out with me. And again, I would get the right timing. I'd pop up and then I'd wipe out. And he said, oh, my first wave in when that happened, he said, you're standing too far forward. I took one step back and I caught the next wave in. And so it was just like, I kept trying and putting so much effort in, and I couldn't do it. And so that's what I was feeling like in my life. I was reading everything. I'm, following my astrology. I'm just trying. And it was pretty frustrating because I felt like I was putting a lot of effort in. So when I crossed paths with you through a YouTube universe, I just really resonated with how you approach coaching. And I appreciated that it was kind of feminine focused. I knew I needed something different. And so when we started, I was really looking to connect more deeply with my intuition. I've always had it. It's always been spot on. I've dismissed it because it doesn't fit into the logical, rational intellect. I've worked in academia and all sorts of things like that. So the intellect was the highest form. So what I felt like was there was this kind of battle that would take place all the time of my intellect and my rational mind, sort of this very masculine part of myself that I'd just been conditioned my whole life that was what you're supposed to aspire to. That's how you're supposed to navigate the world. Whereas I had these moments and glimpses when I navigated in a different way, and it was so much more gentle and joyous and loving. And so what I had wanted was help getting back to that and really figuring out a way to trust myself more. Because when I can quiet the noise, I can hear myself. I've always had that ability, but I have a hard time quieting the noise and all the craziness. So I think that's really where I was at.
I'm really curious, during your journey, what was the biggest breakthrough that you had about yourself?
Yeah, I think even going in, the idea of coaching, I've had friends who've done coaching, and it was, again, sort of this very Western, your career, very specific, goal driven. And I haven't struggled with goals in that I have no purpose or direction in life. I feel sometimes the way I had to do them at work or things like that, it was very arbitrary. It was like, okay, I will start 4 programs by this date and we'll have this many participants. And so when I think about goals, that, when we started this work, I was like, oh, what specific thing? And so I will say I appreciated that there wasn't any sort of wrong answer. And I think it took me a little while to kind of allow myself to really be free and ask the questions. So there was a turning point about 5 sessions in where we were trying a particular meditation, and however much I tried, I realized I was kind of going through the motions. And so I shared that feedback. I was like almost self-conscious to share the feedback, but I did. And you were very gracious, and you want that kind of feedback to know what's working and what's not, and how, you know, it turns out, as we discussed later, I wasn't quite probably ready for that. And we were able to like come from a different angle, which worked beautifully. And I think um, it, at that point, I realized, you know, I think I even had subconscious or unconscious thoughts of what coaching is, a very, like I said, very specific. And so I was kind of like, all right, well, when are we going to start the list and all the things, you know, in my head. I wasn't necessarily saying that in the coaching. And so I was like, oh, this is what you've been needing, wanting, and asking for, you know, a different way to navigate. It was really like, I think the turning point was helping uncover more of my divine feminine like being, connecting with this deep resonance that I have, and knowing that it doesn't, there is a power in that. You know, it's like the power we all hear about is like this aggressive and, again, masculine sort of must do. I mean, there were a number of things we talked about my cycle, and just I've been more interested in cyclical living and kind of tuning into that around my cycle too. And so there was really this shift for me about halfway through, where it's I had been like, again, I knew I was getting in my own way, but I didn't know how to release that and let go and navigate. And I think I really felt safe to do it. And we again, you brought so many different interesting, you know, some things are things that therapists would use, and other things are different types of meditation. And so it allowed me to access part of myself that I really had a tough kind of shell and exterior around. And so I think shifting that and really truly understanding, when I make changes, it impacts my life. Like, I see it. If I can show up in a different way, things work differently in my life. Which again, it's like, I've always sort of said that, and that's been the narrative, and I get it, but I wasn't living it. And so I feel like this shifting to a more sort of feminine approach to my life, divine feminine, has helped me understand more how to live from that way.
Rachel, I so appreciate everything that you're sharing here, because, and thank you for sharing so honestly and vulnerably, because I feel that that is a very universal and very common issue that a lot of modern day women face. You know, women like you who are very bright, high achieving, you've done great things in your life, and yet you knew that the old way, the traditional way that you've been brought up to do things, were just not working for you. And you were aware, highly intelligent, highly self-aware. You knew that there was a different way of being. You knew you wanted to get there. Even though intellectually you knew all of this, there wasn't still a deep embodied sense of being that person, of experiencing that different way. So during our time together, and you're absolutely right, there was that turnaround moment that was pivotal, because it also felt important for you to have gone through the first couple of sessions where I was holding space for the old way of being to really come to the surface. Like, I remember you sharing that it was really important. You recognize that those initial sessions where you had to go through all those layers and be really clear about how you were going about living your life, how you're going about approaching the issues, not just for coaching, but also in your everyday life. And then when there was that shift, it became really apparent, and it enabled you to appreciate that you do have that ability to step into that new future desired version of you, but you just needed some holding and some facilitation and guidance to get there.
I did. I needed to be, it's almost like I needed help giving myself permission to change. Because I think, along with the intellectual, you know, I've worked in academia, I think I said that before, all sorts of government, this, that, and the other. I'm like, I'm loyal, I'm responsible, I'm reliable, like all these things that I've been attached to about myself. Doesn't mean I need to go be completely not loyal to any of my friends now, and that's how we're changing this. But I needed help giving myself permission to change. And that was huge. And I have searched high and low. I mean, ultimately, I give the permission, but having someone help facilitate that in a gentle way where we weren't rushing it. And I think, yeah, you're right. Those first sessions, I was able to see that, I needed to keep telling my story. And yeah, it was interesting to realize that. And there were a few things I did on my own that sort of my intuition had told me as we started. I really took this as a container. And I was so grateful that it was like a period of time. As I said, I'd like to do some periodic, probably ongoing. But the fact that this was like a container, I've written in my journal for over 30 years, and I decided during this period that I was not going to write in my journal, and I was going to express what I needed to in other ways. I was like, it's kind of, if you keep, again, doing the same thing you've done for 30 years, but expect different results, so really allowing myself to play with some of these things while we were working together was really helpful too. And to have someone to share that with.
Yeah. You know, that piece that you said around giving yourself permission really, really struck me because you were at an interesting point in your life where investing and committing to a container like this wasn't necessarily a prudent or a logical or rational decision to make. So I'm also curious, like what made you decide, what clinched it for you that you thought to yourself, you know what, I deserve this. I'm going to give this to myself. What was that factor that led to your decision to work with me?
Yeah. And so, as you know, the context, I left kind of a fairly high paying job in academia, director of operations, and then went off into the desert for a while, worked at a library, found myself back, chose to come back to where I'm from, and was really struggling. I didn't have a full-time job. I was kind of doing odds and ends. And from a rational, logical point of view, I should not have spent funds that I didn't have. But there was this sort of deep knowing that this will shake out, like the money I will shake out getting this paid for, whatever. Yeah. So I put it, it was an investment in myself. I do think that's very kind of like Western talk, but it was just, there was a deep knowing that it's like, I need help. And especially, I just knew when we had our conversation that I wanted to work with you. And we discussed giving me a little time to kind of get ducks in a row. And ironically, ducks did not get in a row by the time we started. So it just is funny to show how life, like the chaos I was in, returned right when we were going to start. So it was this, yeah, it was a beautiful gift to myself. And I don't think it was irresponsible. I am 100% happy with what I did. And I think, again, it helped me get to know myself in a way. And I feel completely worth the investment. And again, it was this sort of letting go of control on all the fronts and really stepping in and trusting. And it was like beautiful to watch myself go through that journey too. And I think, again, whereas when I maybe initially started, I was like, okay, well, my goal should be I'll figure out a new career. And that's very like traditional coaching, the idea around it. And so I think that was those first few sessions. I was like, oh, I got to figure out a career. And it's like, that's not for right now. Like, we're okay. We'll do the experiences we're doing right now. And yeah, it's going to be, the trusting was a big one. So that was, again, part of this goal that I had as we started, and really helped me kind of continue to build trust in the unfolding.
Mm.
But from like a grounded, loving place, and loving myself, and also loving externally. So
Yeah, it makes me really happy to hear that you've arrived at a place where you're really happy with the outcome and also with yourself, and that you felt that it was completely worth putting your effort, your time, your money into this change that you're seeing. I'm kind of curious now, like what was the most valuable And if you could say the tangible results or insights that you gained from working with me.
Finding this balance within myself, like the yin and the yang, the dark and the light. Um, I had shared with you a number of times. It just felt like I had this battle. It was like this reoccurring battle within myself around the logic, rational, you should do this, and this more like authentic, free, liberated woman who people are drawn to, and so it's just been beautiful kind of to reflect on that. I'd say um I'm not sure the exact words. It's not control, but it is almost like I have control over how my life unfolds in the sense of how I show up. That was, I think, the biggest thing. And we didn't ever even talked about it, I think, in that way. And so that's what's so beautiful is like it was experiential. It was like, okay, let's practice these ways of connecting with yourself. Let's practice these ways of talking to yourself more kindly, but in a way that also I could have done that in therapy, but it would have been very analytical and cerebral. And there was this beautiful way you helped me navigate that was just different, and it resonated more with me. And so I think it was like more lasting. And I've had a couple, like my two best friends that have like been through the thick of it with me have definitely noticed a change. Like they've commented on it. So that's another nice thing to hear, these people who love me dearly, and they're probably a bit less spiritual than me, and all the kinds of ways we navigate, and just they're like, hey, whatever works for you. And yeah, so it's kind of beautiful to see that reflected.
Where would you say you are now if prior to working with me, you were facing all these ongoing battles and conflicts with yourself? What about right now? How are you feeling? How do you feel inside yourself? And how does that make you uh how does that make you feel about your future?
Yeah, I think I'm now remembering we talked a bit about, like, one of my goals was create new neural pathways. That was pretty specific. Um, and and again, we didn't specifically talk about that, but we did it. Like we practiced that, And so I think that I feel like I now I'm allowing myself permission to be myself. And all these new ways, like I've had a very diverse life filled with adventure, and I've done a lot of things. Like it's kind of, I look back and I don't know, I saw Forrest Gump a long time ago, but I was like, I've lived as many lives as that guy. Just the various crazy different things that I've done. And there are moments I can see where I felt more me and free. And then I can also look back and see where I really kept myself small. I dimmed my light because I was worried it was gonna, make other people feel bad, or, trying to make people who didn't like me and all these kinds of things. And so there is a sort of freedom that has emerged. It will still require practice. It's baby, it's like new, it's fresh. Um, and so I'm so grateful for that. And I'm so aware of it, which is just lovely. And I've seen, even just in the time we were working together, as I let go of this old way of navigating, it still comes up. I'm not saying it's gone. It's going to require continuous practice and awareness, but things have worked out in a way in my life, various instances that are completely surprising, out of left field, like that I'm just like, what? And it was something I would have never have imagined. My old way of thinking or my old way of approaching would have had me looking like this, whereas I'm like, oh, that feels right. And I've been able to make decisions in the past about that feels right, but getting to a place where I trust that is different. So I think this has given me a beautiful opportunity to really practice moving forward in a new way, impacting my relationships, impacting, you know, how I navigate the world, how I live, where I live, who I'm friends with, what I do to bring in income versus this concept of career. So it's just, there were so many, there's so much to unpack. And I feel like I got a really good start with that. And I feel more equipped to continue that journey myself too.
Hmm. It sounds like the biggest breakthrough you had was that you had an experience, right? It wasn't just an intellectual knowing that, oh, okay, I think I'm supposed to do things this way, etc. It was during our time together, as you mentioned, you got to practice embodying and being. And then each time we met, we would continue to refine that. So in that sense, it was very customized and personalized to your needs. What I'm also hearing, and I really appreciate the honesty in this, is that you said, oh, I'm only just starting and you're taking baby steps. But what I'm also hearing in the way you talked about it was that there is this sense of trust in yourself. You know that you're resourceful, you know that you're capable because you have been doing it. You have already been taking action and you're already seeing the results. And that gives you the momentum that you need to carry on moving forward in your journey. I'm also hearing you say that you gave yourself permission to just be authentically who you are versus the old battles of, people pleasing, trying to live a life that didn't feel true and real for you, and constantly worrying and wondering, are you supposed to be doing something else, etc. Now I can hear in your voice, there's this clarity of the direction that you need to move towards, a lot more clarity and a lot more confidence in yourself as well. So that's really beautiful to witness. And I feel very honored, very privileged to have been a part of your journey, holding space for you. I would also like to ask you a question that I think perhaps the audience who's watching this will also wonder, like what was the difference between having this one-on-one container with me versus, say, taking a group program? I think it was something that you were speaking into as well. What made it worth it for you to sign up for something that was one-to-one?
Yeah, I think working in community and group can be wonderful. I knew that for me, getting a foundation is really helpful sort of one-on-one. I'm very sensitive to other thoughts, opinions, this working directly with you in this very kind of like safe, intimate space allowed me to really show up. Allowed all the, the parts that I'm like, ooh, or I don't want to acknowledge this. And as you know, there was lots of crying, but in such a good way, accessing parts of myself that I just would not touch before. And I think that's feeling safe in that way was critical. And accessing those spaces, unless I sort of am able to touch, release, or whatever, I can't create space for anything new. And so I really saw that I was, it's like I went through the process working with you, but also, I was able to kind of like observe from in the week between when we meet. And I just felt grateful. There's someone who's along this journey. I have friends that are along the journey, but this was a very, like, you have no other motive except to sort of help me be the highest version of myself. You're not my mom, who she wants that, but she has a version of that she probably thinks is the best one, or, such and such friend or whatever. No lovers in the picture at the moment, but I'm sure at some point that would be the case too. So I think it was really important for me you helped me hear myself, having this direct communication. I love learning from other people and all that kind of stuff, but this felt like a delicate space in my life that really would benefit from one-on-one, where I felt safe and understood and listened to. Yeah, so I think that's why.
Yeah, it sounds like you were ready for transformation. You were ready to dive right in, and you knew what you needed, you knew what you wanted. And I think that's really important. In fact, I'm thinking if someone's watching this and wondering, is working one-on-one for me, what advice would you give? Or what are some of the considerations that you think would be important to factor in?
Yeah, I mean, I I loved that I was able to have a 30-minute call with you up front, and just kind of like connect in that level. Just you can get a lot from that. Just at least I got a lot from that, just how we interacted and how thoughtful you are and how you actively listen. Um, and I think you ask good questions. And so for me, it was really, again, I didn't have this clear, specific, you know, I need to be in this job or career. I need to fix those types of goals. But the goal I had was I really need to work on myself. And I had a sense of sort of the, like, again, the trust. I think, you have this lovely kind of packet people fill out before they start. And then also another activity of writing yourself a letter. And it was even just those things got me. I was like, oh, this is going to be different for me because I wasn't allowed to use any negative language in it. And I'd have to rephrase things that normally. So it was just even starting from the beginning, there was such a positivity. And I think that I feel like I'm a positive person, but it was shifting the dialogue. And so I think knowing that if someone just knows they need some support, um, and also knowing it's going to be totally like catered to them, like it's not generic, it's not okay, we all go through this process, like customized, I think, as you said. It felt very customized, and also you working with your intuition around me as a person. So I think if someone is looking to do this, I'd also suggest not having like a ton of travel or outside things going on. I had a big trip in the middle for like 5 days, but that actually played a lot into it was a wonderful experience to navigate as we were working through some of this stuff. It was a 20-year reunion, so lots going on 20 years ago. And so I think that's another thing I would suggest is making sure you can commit to it. And the great thing was it wasn't like there was all this homework in between. I think that's another thing with coaching in these sort of Western generic rounds. It's like, okay, again, what are the things we're going to do and accomplish in between? And it was more sitting with what had come up or opening up to the next week with a new lens, like, oh, let's try to navigate, or trying a new meditation. So I think it felt that's what was sort of a shift for me, is it felt very nurturing and not, I have a master's degree. I'm used to like, okay, and then we do this and then we do this and the next step. And it was just a very different, and the whole process was wonderful in that way because it helped me understand that I don't have to be striving all the time. So I think that those are the kind of the things that I would share that might be good for people to think about around coaching. That was what you were asking, right?
Yeah, that was really helpful. I mean, I loved what you pointed out, this idea of it's no longer about the doing, because we worked a lot with the feminine, which is about a way of being. So less of the doing, the hustling, the pushing. I mean, so many women are burnt out and tired and overwhelmed and exhausted. And it's actually just being in a different state, being in a different frequency. So I think that that's really the perfect note to end on here. Thank you so much for being open to share your journey, your highs and lows, your journey of transformation. I thank you very much because I feel that this will be of great help to the women who are watching this. Um, and so let me just end by asking you, is there anything that you would like to end with? Any final thoughts that you would like to share from the bottom of your heart?
Yes, well, and you didn't plug me to say this, so I'm going to say it, but I'm so grateful. You continuously brought such positive, like beautiful light and energy to our exchanges. You're incredibly thoughtful. And I think it was sort of, yeah, it was the perfect thing to help me navigate this space, navigate this. I've been trying for a few years by myself out in the desert. Like, and it was just, I needed help, and to be able to feel seen and heard, and yeah, allow myself to navigate in a different way was such a gift. And so I really am grateful and thankful for your generosity in sharing that and allowing me to take that journey. So